Before we begin, it is important to understand that the albums covered in this video explore some of the darkest, most unsettling corners of the human experience. Themes of death, despair, mental illness, trauma, and existential dread are woven into the music you're about to learn about. Some of these works are emotionally intense, disturbing, and confrontational, pushing the boundaries of what many would consider comfortable listening. This video is not for everyone. If you are sensitive to dark, disturbing content, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The intent here is not to glorify or sensationalize these themes, but to explore how music can reflect the complexities of the human condition, even when it ventures into uncomfortable territory. Proceed with caution as we descend the abyss. Music has always been a reflection of human emotion, capturing our joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes. But there's another side to music, one that ventures into the unsettling, the strange, the deeply disturbing. These are the albums that push boundaries, that confront us with the darker aspects of existence. They don't shy away from discomfort, they lean into it, exploring themes of death, isolation, trauma, and chaos. Welcome to the weird, depressing, and disturbing albums Iceberg. In this video, we'll be descending through layers of music that challenge not only your understanding of sound, but also our ability to confront the darker truths about ourselves and the world around us. Each tier takes us deeper into unsettling soundscapes and emotional rawness, some familiar, others far more obscure. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. The music you'll hear is haunting, strange, and at times deeply troubling. But it is also powerful, reflecting the human condition in ways that are often uncomfortable, yet impossible to ignore. Prepare yourself as we descend, layer by layer, into the depths of the iceberg. As we begin our descent into this iceberg, we start with a collection of albums that resonate with something profoundly human: despair. This first tier is the surface, where the music is familiar, but it still carries with it a deep weight, confronting emotions many of us struggle to understand or articulate. The albums in this tier explore the cracks in the human psyche, where melancholy, rage, and alienation brood just beneath the surface. This is the first works that reflect a world out of balance, where personal traumas collide with societal decay. The themes are often raw, dealing with loss, the erosion of identity, and the slow unraveling of the mind. But don't be fooled by their popularity. Though these albums might be well known, they are far from comforting. Instead, they serve as a mirror to the darker side of the human existence. For some, they've become anthems of rebellion or catharsis, while for others, they offer a haunting reminder of life's most fragile moments. In this tier, you'll encounter music that simmers with nihilism, stories of personal destruction, and sonic landscapes drenched in sorrow and existential dread. While they may not be the most obscure, their ability to disturb, unsettle, and stir deep emotions is undeniable. This is music that confronts you, that forces you to face the demons we all carry, whether we're ready or not. Welcome to Echoes of Despair and Disillusionment, where the first signs of madness and melancholy are woven into every note, waiting to pull you deeper. The Caretaker, everywhere at the end of time. Our journey into despair begins with an exploration of memory and its inevitable decay. This entry delves into a work that many describe as not just an album, but an experience, a soundscape that confronts the terrifying realities of dementia. The project is a sweeping 6-stage chronicle of mental deterioration, capturing the gradual loss of identity, clarity, and the ability to recall one's past. At first, it may seem familiar. The early stages evoke a kind of nostalgic warmth, with old, crackling ballroom music that feels distant, yet recognizable. But this familiarity is fleeting. As the music progresses, the listener is pulled into a fog. Melodies become fragmented, distorted, and lost. The structure of the music disintegrates, just as the mind does. Moments of clarity become fewer and farther between, until they're swallowed by an overwhelming sense of confusion, emptiness, and dread. By the final stages, the sound is completely unraveled into a chaotic void, reflecting the complete erosion of memory, personality, and self. It's hauntingly accurate depiction of a disease that strips away everything that makes a person who they are. There's no comfort here, no resolution, just the slow, inevitable march towards oblivion. Listening to this piece isn't just hearing music, it's confronting a very real, very disturbing loss. that we all fear. This entry forces us to face one of humanity's most devastating truths, that the mind is fragile, and for some, everything we hold dear, our memories, our relationships, our very sense of self, can slip away like sand through our fingers. It's an unsettling emotional descent into darkness that lingers long after the music has faded. One could say this album isn't just about losing one's memory. It's about the end of everything we know, and the slow, agonizing experience of watching it slip away. 9 Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral. The next entry drags us down into a piece of inner chaos and destruction, a suffocating spiral into personal annihilation. This album, released at the peak of the 90s industrial rock scene, is a brutal journey through the mind of someone teetering on the edge, balancing pain, anger, and self-loathing. Unlike the distant and detached deterioration of memory, this album is raw, immediate, and aggressive. It's not the gradual fade into nothingness, it's the sound of someone violently tearing themselves apart. The music feels sharp, abrasive, built with layers of distortion and mechanical noises that mirror the protagonist's own mental and emotional collapse. It's an album that screams, that claws at the listener with its unrelenting intensity. At its core, this album is about the disintegration of the self, an exploration of addiction, self-harm, and the rejection of everything that once provided meaning. Each track is like a snapshot of suffering, capturing moments of extreme self-destructive behavior and profound existential crisis. The lyrics are hauntingly introspective, reflecting a tortured inner dialogue that spirals out of control. But the most unsettling aspect of this album is its honesty. It doesn't glamorize destruction. It exposes the raw truth behind it, the emptiness, the loneliness, the hollow ache that comes when everything you are begins to collapse under the weight of your own despair. There's a sickening kind of clarity to it all, like watching something burn, knowing there's no saving it. This entry is as brutal sonically as it is emotionally, delivering not just music, but a psychological experience that is both captivating and deeply disturbing. It is a descent into madness, one that doesn't offer salvation or redemption, only the cold comfort of collapse. The downward spiral isn't a metaphor, it's a reality, one that drags the listener down into the depths of human suffering with a visceral intensity that makes it impossible to shake. Radiohead, Kid A. Our next descent into the abyss takes us into a strange alien world, one where the familiar is distorted beyond recognition and human emotions feel distant, almost mechanical. This album marks a stark departure from traditional rock, using fragmented, disjointed sounds to create a disorienting cold atmosphere. This isn't an album about personal destruction or inner turmoil. It's about detachment, about the slow disillusion of human connection in a world that feels increasingly artificial and isolating. The music mirrors the feeling with icy electronic soundscapes, fractured melodies, and robotic vocals that seem disconnected from any sense of warmth or comfort. It's a reflection of the digital age, where technology replaces emotion, and where the sense of self is quietly slipping away, almost unnoticed. There's an overwhelming sense of alienation running through this work. It's like standing in a room full of people, yet feeling completely alone. The lyrics hint at societal collapse, environmental disaster, and the loss of individuality, yet they remain cryptic, as if words can't even express the deep unease lurking beneath the surface. Listening to this album feels like drifting through a dystopian dreamscape, a world that's cold, desolate, and indifferent to human suffering. The music pulses with a sense of dread, as if something terrible is happening just beneath the surface, but you're powerless to stop it. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this entry is its subtlety. Unlike the raw aggression or overt darkness of other works, this album creeps up on you slowly, planting seeds of unease that grow long after the music has ended. It forces you to confront the disconnection, the numbness, the quiet unraveling of society and self. It's a haunting reflection of a world where humanity is slipping away, piece by piece, until nothing remains but cold, mechanical echoes. Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. In this next entry, we step into a shadowed world of bleakness and isolation. This album is not an outburst of rage or a descent into madness. Instead, it feels like a quiet surrender to the void, a suffocating numbness that presses down on you with every note. The music is stripped down, cold, and minimalistic, creating a sense of space that feels vast yet claustrophobic at the same time. It echoes with the sound of despair, an overwhelming sense that the light has faded and all that's left is the crushing weight of existence. The rhythms are mechanical, almost robotic, like a heartbeat slowing down, losing its will to keep going. Lyrically, this album explores themes of alienation, inner torment, and the unbearable weight of modern life. There's a stark honesty here, no dramatic flair, no exaggerated emotion. Just a blunt, unflinching look at the emptiness that can consume a person from within. It's not just about personal suffering, but about the feeling that life itself is hollow, devoid of meaning or purpose. The singer's haunting, detached voice adds to the oppressive atmosphere, delivering lines that feel like they're spoken from the bottom of a deep, dark well. There's no escape, no release, just the cold reality of emotional disconnection, the state of being utterly alone, even in the company of others. What makes this entry so disturbing is its subtlety. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply lingers. Like a cold wind on a dark, empty street. The more you listen, the more the sense of hopelessness and dread sinks in, until you're left feeling as if you've been submerged in darkness with no way out. This is the sound of isolation, pure, unfiltered, and deeply unsettling. It's a reminder that sometimes the most haunting experiences are the ones where nothing happens, and yet everything feels wrong. Marilyn Manson, Antichrist Superstar. Next, we plunge into an album that's as much an act of rebellion as it is a work of music. This entry is raw, provocative, and unapologetically confrontational, a scathing assault on religion, authority, and everything society holds sacred. It's designed to provoke, to shock, and to make the listener uncomfortable. Unlike the quiet despair or alienation of other works in this tier, this album seethes with anger. It's the sound of someone who's had enough, who's ripping through the seams of decency and tearing down the walls of conformity. The music is abrasive, chaotic, and filled with violent energy, mixing industrial noise with vicious lyrics that spit venom at every institution that seeks to control or suppress. But beyond the surface shock value lies a deeper narrative, one of transformation and destruction. This album tells the story of a rise to power, but not in the traditional sense. It's a journey of self-empowerment through nihilism, a rejection of everything society demands in favor of embracing the darkness within. The themes of corruption, degradation, and self-destruction pulse through each track, creating a sense of both liberation and decay. The most unsettling part of this entry is its ability to draw the listener into its chaotic world, to make them feel complicit in the destruction it depicts. There's a sense of danger here, a feeling that the music is not just a reflection of a broken world, but an invitation to join in tearing it all apart. With its disturbing imagery and brutal honesty, this album takes you into the darkest corners of the human mind, places filled with anger, resentment, and the raw urge to tear down everything in your path. It's not just a rejection of societal norms, it's a scorched earth manifesto against everything that tries to limit human expression. This is not an album for the faint of heart. It's a declaration of war on conformity, a descent into chaos, and a reflection of the darkness that lurks within us all. We're halfway through Tier 1 of this iceberg. So far, we've explored the unsettling realities of mental decay, personal destruction, and emotional collapse. The deeper we go, the more these albums confront us with themes that are hard to ignore. Music that doesn't just echo sadness, but pulls you into the void. How are you holding up? If you're still with me, you've already descended into some of the darker corners of music. But remember, this is just the beginning. There's much more to uncover, and as we move forward, the music will become even more chaotic, haunting, and disturbing. Take a moment to catch your breath, because the second half of this tier will take us deeper into disillusionment and despair. The music here doesn't just reflect darkness, it thrives in it. If you found yourself unsettled so far, it will only get stranger from here. Stay with me as we continue our descent. Korn, self-titled album. Our next descent into the abyss comes with an album that channels pure unfiltered emotion, an expression of pain, trauma, and rage that refuses to be silenced. This entry feels like a wound that has been torn open, exposing the raw nerves underneath. It's an album that speaks to the darkest parts of the human experience: childhood trauma, isolation, and the inner battles that many face in silence. The music itself is harsh, almost suffocating. It's not refined or polished, it's visceral, a chaotic blend of heavy, grinding guitars, relentless rhythms, and a vocal performance that alternates between eerie whispers and anguished screams. This album is primal in its execution, capturing the feeling of being trapped in your own mind, struggling to break free from the weight of personal demons. Lyrically, this entry is an outpouring of emotional pain, recounting deeply personal experiences of abuse, neglect, and self-loathing. There's no filter here, no attempt to make the subject matter easier to swallow. Instead, it's laid bare for the listener to confront head-on. The themes of anger and vulnerability intertwine, creating a sense of catharsis that feels as if the singer is fighting against his own inner turmoil with every breath. But what makes this album so unsettling isn't just the raw emotion, it's the fact that it resonates with so many people. For anyone who's felt alienated, hurt, or lost, this album becomes a voice for the voiceless. It captures the feeling of being on the edge, the sense that everything is closing in and there's nowhere to go but deeper into the darkness. This is an album that doesn't try to heal the wounds. It tears them open further, demanding that you feel every ounce of pain. There's a cathartic release here, but it comes at a cost. It's a reminder that sometimes the most disturbing experiences come from within, from the parts of ourselves we're too afraid to confront. In this entry, there's no escape from the trauma. It's raw, relentless, and refuses to be ignored. Black Sabbath, self-titled album. With our next entry, we turn to an album that laid the groundwork for an entire genre, an album steeped in darkness, doom, and an almost supernatural dread. This is where the sound of evil became music, where themes of fear and the occult were brought to the forefront, setting the stage for everything that would follow. The music here is slow, heavy, and ominous, creating a sense of weight that presses down on the listener like a gathering storm. From the very first notes, it feels like something dark is approaching, something inevitable and unstoppable. The atmosphere is thick with dread, as if the music itself is a portal to a darker reality. Thematically, this album explores the terrifying unknown, the fear of forces beyond our control, both supernatural and existential. It evokes images of ritual darkness in a world where the line between good and evil is blurred. There's an almost cinematic quality to it, as if the music is the soundtrack to a horror film that's unfolding in real time. But beyond the occult imagery and eerie tones lies a deeper exploration of human fear, fear of the unknown, fear of death, and fear of what lies beyond the veil of reality. The lyrics dance around these themes, never giving too much away, but leaving just enough to unsettle. It's a journey into the unknown, where every riff and every beat feels like a step deeper into the void. What makes this album so enduringly disturbing is the way it captures the essence of fear, not just in its subject matter, but in the very sound of the music itself. The slow, grinding pace, the dark harmonies, and the almost ritualistic rhythms all combine to create a sense of something ancient, something primal. It's as if the music is channeling the dark energies that lie hidden beneath the surface of our reality. This entry isn't just about the dark themes. It's about the feeling that something is lurking just beyond your understanding, something you can't see, but can almost feel. And with every listen, that feeling grows stronger, as if the darkness is inching closer, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Pink Floyd, The Wall. Our next entry takes us on a journey into isolation, paranoia, and the slow construction of mental walls that separate the self from the outside world. This album is more than just a collection of songs. It's a conceptual experience, an exploration of one person's descent into alienation and madness. It's the story of a mind under siege, building barriers as a means of self-preservation, but ultimately becoming trapped within those very walls. The music moves between haunting melodies, disorienting soundscapes, and moments of explosive intensity. It mirrors the emotional and psychological turmoil of the protagonist, who retreats further into isolation with each passing moment. The wall, both literal and metaphorical, grows taller, brick by brick, as trauma, fear, and betrayal take their toll. This is an album about the slow unraveling of the mind. Themes of abandonment, war, and societal pressure weigh heavily on the protagonist, pushing them into a state of paranoia and self-imposed exile. The music captures this perfectly, transitioning from melancholy reflections to aggressive, chaotic outbursts as the walls close in. But what makes this entry so unsettling is the way it resonates with the listener. We've all felt the temptation to shut ourselves off from the world, to hide behind our defenses when the pain becomes too much. This album taps into the universal experience, but takes it to its darkest extreme, showing the devastating consequences of shutting out the world entirely. As the story progresses, the cracks in the wall begin to show. The protagonist becomes trapped, unable to escape the prison they've built for themselves. It's a harrowing exploration of how the very walls meant to protect us can turn into our greatest tormentors. This entry isn't just about isolation. It's about the psychological cost of repression, the slow erosion of one's identity, and the unbearable weight of emotional scars. It's a haunting reminder of how easy it is to lose yourself in the struggle to protect yourself from the world. The Cure, Pornography. With this next entry, we enter a world that feels suffocating, where every breath is thick with despair and every sound is drenched in a sense of hopelessness. This album doesn't flirt with darkness, it fully embraces it, offering no relief, no glimmer of light, just an overwhelming atmosphere of nihilism and emotional collapse. The music is dense, almost claustrophobic, built on layers of reverb-soaked guitars, pounding drums, and haunting, echoing vocals. There's a weight to every track, as if the album itself is sinking under the burden of its own despair. The lyrics speak of existential dread, emotional numbness, and the gradual disintegration of both mind and soul. It's a record that confronts the listener with the raw reality of depression and despair, with no attempt to soften the blow. But what makes this album so uniquely disturbing is its unrelenting nature. From the opening moment to the final track, it offers no escape from the suffocating darkness. Every song feels like another step deeper into a bottomless pit, where the walls are closing in and there's no way out. The emotional intensity builds and builds until it feels like it might collapse under its own weight. The themes here are stark, death, alienation, and the sheer meaninglessness of existence. There's no metaphor, no attempt to mask the bleakness. It's laid bare, as if the music itself is a final cry from the edge, where hope has long since disappeared. The lyrics reflect this, offering glimpses into a mind that's unraveling, consumed by its own pain and self-destruction. This album is a descent into the darkest corners of the human experience, where despair isn't just an emotion, it's a state of being. It's the sound of someone reaching their breaking point and realizing there's no way back. And for the listener, it's an unsettling, immersive experience that pulls you in and refuses to let go. There's no redemption here, no catharsis, just a stark, harrowing reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the darkness that can consume it. Tyler, the Creator, Bastard. Our final entry in this tier drags us into a world of brutal self-reflection and unapologetic confrontation with inner demons. This album is not a passive journey, it's a direct challenge, where the listener is thrown headfirst into the artist's chaotic, unfiltered psyche. There's a sense of anger and confusion here, but also a twisted vulnerability that makes the experience even more disturbing. The music is raw, often unsettling, built on heavy, jarring beats and dark, atmospheric melodies. But it's the lyrics that drive this album into deeply unsettling territory. They cut through a mix of rage, despair, and dark humor, weaving together themes of abandonment, mental health struggles, and a search for identity in a world that seems to offer no answers. It's an exploration of personal pain with no attempt to disguise the bitterness or the emotional scars. There's a consistent sense of internal conflict, rage directed at absent figures, anger at the world, and perhaps most unsettling, anger at the self. The album feels like an ongoing therapy session gone wrong, where the deepest, most painful thoughts are exposed, not for healing, but for the sheer act of release. It's cathartic, but in a way that leaves you feeling unsettled, as if you've witnessed something too personal, too raw. What makes this entry so disturbing isn't just the content, it's the sheer, unfiltered honesty of it all. There's no attempt to make the listener comfortable. The artist confronts his own pain, insecurities, and rage with an intensity that can be hard to swallow. At times, it feels like a cry for help. At others, it's a weapon used against the world that has failed him. This is an album that thrives in discomfort, that pushes boundaries and makes the listeners sit in the uncomfortable space between self-loathing and defiance. It's a journey through the darker side of self-exploration, one that leaves you questioning not just the artist, but yourself. In this final entry of the tier, we're reminded that the most disturbing truths are often the ones that come from within, and sometimes, confronting those truths is the hardest battle of all. We've now reached the end of Echoes of Despair and Disillusionment, a tier that has taken us through some of the most raw, emotional, and unsettling explorations of the human experience. These albums have not been easy to confront. They've dragged us through the depths of isolation, rage, and the gradual erosion of identity. Each one in its own way has forced us to face uncomfortable truths, whether through the slow disintegration of memory, the violent destruction of the self, or the bleak realities of emotional collapse. In this tier, we've heard music that exposes the fragility of the human mind, capturing moments of despair and torment in ways that are hauntingly relatable. These albums don't just reflect darkness, they embrace it, using sound as a medium to express the inexpressible. For some, this has been catharsis. For others, it's a reminder of the chaos that lurks just beneath the surface. But this is only the beginning. As we descend deeper, the darkness will only grow stranger, more obscure, and far more disturbing. The surface is cracked, revealing the emotional and psychological turmoil that lies just beneath. What lies ahead will take us even further into the unknown, where the lines between reality, art, and horror blur in ways that will leave a lasting mark. So prepare yourself for the next step down the iceberg. Things are only going to get darker from here. And that brings us to the end of this chapter of the weird, depressing, and disturbing albums Iceberg. We've only scratched the surface of what's to come, and things will only get darker as we descend deeper. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me on this journey into the strange and unsettling corners of music. If you enjoyed the video or found it thought-provoking, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations like this. Let me know in the comments what albums or themes resonated with you the most, or what other albums you think should have made the list. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover beneath the surface. Stay tuned for the next tier of the iceberg, if you dare. Thank you for watching.